Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the Schomburg Center Literary Festival. This is my first time here. Danté, this is your first time as well?
On stage. Ooh, might kind of hot. All right. First time on stage, bro.
Okay.
But it's like my third time to the center.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. This is the 5th annual Schomburg Center Literary Festival, honoring the rebellious, joy-filled privilege and necessity of reading. My name is Robert Jones Jr., and I am the author of the novel The Prophets. And I am honored to be chatting with Danté from the James Baldwin stage. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to my brother Danté, who is an award-winning writer, ordained minister, and author of Shouting in the Fire, an American Epistle, named by Georgia Writers Association as Georgia Writer of the Year, by the Center of American Progress as one of the 22 faith leaders to watch in 2022, and by Religion News as one of the 10 up-and-coming faith influencers. Danté's work has appeared in The Atlantic, The New York Times, The Washington Post, Time, ESPN's Andscape, Oxford American, Sojourners, NPR, CNN, MSNBC, and more. He received his bachelor's in sociology from Clemson University in South Carolina, his home state, and his master's from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Harlem World, please give Danté Stewart a warm welcome. Now, Minister Stewart, would you please bless the congregation with a reading from your work?
Oh, indeed, indeed. First of all, I am so grateful that each of you have made time in your day to come hang out with us just for a little bit as I do a little bit of a reading and we share some space together. Now, I actually was wondering what to actually read for this moment right now because I'm deep in like book number 2 and I'm working on other essays. And so I was listening to Mother Viola Fletcher in there, and she's one of the last surviving persons of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And as I listened to her just now, I just held on to each one of her words, and she reminded me so much of my grandmother. Let me tell you a little bit about my grandmother. My grandma is almost 90 years old. She was born in the 1930s. She's a brilliant, beautiful woman who taught me first taught me the power of stories. She taught me the power of family. She taught me the power of home. She taught me the power of the gravel road. She taught me the power of just walking on a dirt road and noticing what you notice. But most of all, my grandma taught me the power of holding on to the most precious things. And that's always what we have on the inside. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a little bit from Shoutin' in the Fire. And I think I may read a little bit from the new joint. Is that okay with y'all? And then we're going to talk. I am Reverend Danté Stewart, so somebody better keep me on time. I got a Garmin watch, but it died. I went on a run in Central Park this morning, so my watch died. And my phone is actually where I got my new stuff at. So I need some type of amen corner over here to hold up your phone, put your time on, and make sure I stay on time. Amen?
Amen.
All right. As LeVar Burton would say, breathe in, breathe out. And actually, I would invite each one of us to close our eyes real quick and think about how precious it is to be right now here together. The world is so noisy. There's so much happening, but we are here right now to listen, to feel love, and to get a little hope. One more breathe in, breathe out. I'm going to begin. 5 miles from my home that I grew up in is my grandparents' old red brick house in Sandy Run, South Carolina. There are trees, paved roads giving way to beige dirt, old crushed soda cans, There are old rusty cars sitting on cinder blocks, and there are broken mailboxes held together by 2 or 3 nails. 10 miles from this house is the white stained brick church in Swansea, South Carolina. The red carpet on the ground greets you as you enter, always in a suit the best you can muster, the best you have. I don't know if there are maps that show these places, these old landmarks, as many of the old black folk back home would say. I don't know if they show you the red brick house or the old cars or the brick porch with lights on it. I don't know if they show you the white stained brick with the mold traveling upward from the outside air conditioning unit, or the people who travel between both. But they are there. Between these 2 places, the old red brick house that my granddaddy built and the white stained church that we call home was where my grandmother and I would talk about things that we remember, things that were familiar to both of us, things that she only knew, things I only would hear of, things I wanted to say to her but didn't know how. Really, the distance between us was not very far but felt colossal, foreign even. There were parts of her that I could only see in her dark brown eyes and her rough hands smoothed by the Vaseline that I did not know. She rarely likes to talk about it, but she remembers. "Hey, Grandma," I say. "Hey, boy," she says as she sorts through the local paper to get the coupon from the Kroger's, as she called it. "How Jazz and the baby?" she asks as she look up with a smile. She loves talking about my wife and my son and my daughter. She loves her grandkids and her great-grandkids. They doing good. We all right. How you doing? We good. We maintaining. "Grandma, can you tell me a little bit about back then?" I say. She pauses, moving around some of the coupons that she has on the table. "What do you mean?" "Well," I say, trying to figure out what that actually meant. "Well, I'm teaching in class this week, and we looking at a documentary of the Civil Rights Movement." She responds, not really giving an answer, or not really saying too many words. I've told her about all the documentaries that I've watched over the years and how inspired I've been. And I wanted to know, "Grandma, what was it like to live and to love?" "Didn't you say Granddaddy was like real active back then or something?" She smiles, this time fixing her glasses, taking them off and taking out the fog with her shirt. "Yes, he was. He used to take all them people around town to vote. He used to pick them up," she says, her face smoothing out a bit. "He would pick them up and get them registered to vote." I began to smile at the thought that my granddaddy actually was an activist. I had become inspired by so many of the black folk back then and felt even better that my granddaddy was one of them. I walked into the living room. There's an old picture of me and them, and then to the right was an award, NAACP service hours. It read, the name beneath it, Johnny Albert, my granddaddy. "Grandma," I say as I walk back into the kitchen, "you ever think that y'all would be dealing with the same stuff that we dealing with today? You ever thought that things would get better?" She pauses again, her deep brown eyes looking at me with a seriousness as deep as those eyes. "We thought things would get better," she says. "But that's the world for you." She looks down and back up again. "That's just the world." "Grandma, you gonna tell me more about back then?" I started asking. "What do you want to know?" "I want to know how you survived, Grandma. I want to know how you did it." She paused. She gave out a little laugh. She rubbed those rough, greasy hands together. She paused again. She laughed again. She changes the subject. She rarely likes to talk about it, but she remembers. My phone rang one day. It was early. Danté, my mama, said with a trembling voice, "Your granddaddy got out the house. We don't know where he is. We've been looking for hours. He's lost." My heart immediately sank. I grabbed the olive oil out the green bottle. I rubbed my hands together like the Pentecostal kid and say, "In Jesus' name, in Jesus' name." I got on my knees and I prayed. Whenever we would get in trouble, my mama would say, "Call the elders of the church and pray." It may not change nothing, but it changed everything. I was terrified and angry. When dementia takes over a person's life and their heart, the first things to go is their memory and then their body. God, let Granddaddy be found alive. My mama called me a few minutes later. Go back to the river, Deborah. Go back to the river. As children, we would never go to the river. My mama would always warn us about snakes and wild hogs. The river terrified me as a kid. None of us would go there because they had memories of ghosts and ghost stories and all the people that didn't make it out. Y'all, my mama yelled out to the family, let's go back to the river. Go back to the river. Go back to the river. Reuben! 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 She called out for my granddaddy. They knew that wild coyotes ran through the bushes and old trees and dark leaves. They knew of the wild hogs snorting and aggressive. They knew of the river, they knew of the water and the moccasins and the poison and the death. Reuben! She called out one last time. Hey! A voice cries out in the distance. Be quiet, everybody. My mama said, motioning everybody to be still and be silent. We found him. We found him. He's alive. I went back home. I walked up that old same red brick house. I walked up and I saw Grandma. I saw Granddaddy. He was laughing and dancing. Granddaddy, I said, as we sat down on the couch, what do you remember? He says, El Paso, Texas. El Paso. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know himself. He doesn't know Grandma. But he knows this. You still got your Dan Smooth's granddaddy? He paused. He rubbed his bald head with patches of the white on the side. He looked at me. He looked me in the eye. And he says this, I don't know, but I'm still here. Thank you. I ain't gonna read nothing from the new stuff. I'll say that for later.
Danté, thank you so much for that reading. And it's so, I see it with a new pair of eyes after what we just witnessed with the Tulsa survivors. It's like their grandson was saying how you should speak to your elders to get them to talk, because they're willing to talk if you just ask. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I regret. I lost my grandmother when I was 7, and so I didn't have much of a chance to ask her much. But you wrote down in this book, and I'm going to get to why you wrote this book in a moment, but those things, those testimonies, you were a witness for them. Mm-hmm. But speaking of your family, could you talk about your upbringing?
Yeah.
What is it like to be Danté growing up in South Carolina?
Oh, man. Well, if you look at an aerial map of my hometown, of where I'm from, you'll notice that, like, from the beginning of the road to my grandmother's house is about a mile worth of road, straight gravel road. And what I remember so much, and actually I've been thinking about this lately, is like me and my cousins together running on the road and racing one another at night, or hearing my cousins like take the box Chevys and actually race the box Chevys on the road, or even just like remembering like being on that road and seeing cops come down the road because like one of my cousins, them, the U.S. Marshals looking for them or something like that. God. Or even running through the woods and you see all of these like houses like on this singular road where like there are abandoned cars and there are like just so much stuff that's just abandoned there. And I think about my hometown, it's so much of.
And what is your hometown?
So I'm actually between 3 places. So St. Matthew, South Carolina, Swansea, South Carolina, and Sandy Run, South Carolina. Number 1, I was in St. Matthews because that's where we wanted to go to school. My mama didn't want us to go to the white school. During that time, she definitely didn't want that. So we had to stay with my grandmother at Sandy Run. But then our house was in Swansea. Okay. And I think so much of my home upbringing is around like trying to find yourself and make do with what you have. I'm from the Black Rural South, and we don't have much. But what we do have is like you got sports, you got yourself, and you got your family.
When you were reading from Shoutin' in the Fire, something struck me that I didn't notice the first time I read it, is you had to be wary of wild hogs.
Yeah.
Like, hogs attack people?
Oh yeah, in
Like,
the
'cause
South,
I'm
where
a
I'm from?
northerner. We don't have no pigs or hogs up here. So we got squirrels.
Oh yeah. Now you got to worry about hogs. You got to worry
Snakes.
about dogs. You got to worry about snakes.
That's the snakes I
Oh
remember.
yeah. You got to
But
worry about everything.
I
down
didn't
there.
know hogs.
Oh yeah. You catch a wild hog in the woods. You better have you like something to protect yourself. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now talking about Danté the artist, what was the moment that affirmed for you that you were indeed supposed to be a writer?
I actually was asked this question the other day, and I first began that question and said, like, yo, it was back in 2013 where I had just got finished playing football, had a really good career at Clemson, but then ended up transferring, and here I am at Western Carolina, alone by myself. 5 games into the season, I ended up quitting football, and I know 4 things were true of me during that time as a youngin'. I was young, I was sad, I was broke, and I was lonely. And my wife, who was my girl at the time, went to the military. And every single day, and shout out to my wife's somewhere over here. My wife over to the right, shout out to my baby. Every single day, I would write her for 2.5 months straight. And in that moment where I felt so alone and so sad and so broke and so like young, the page was the thing that kept me like safe. That's how I would have told that story.
Okay.
But the way I think now, I would tell how I affirm I'm a writer. Every morning, I show up at the coffee shop at 9 a.m. and I sit down before the blank page and I try and figure out how to do this thing. Over the last few months, I've been walking through serious disappointment. You put your time in, you put your energy into work, and it end up not following through. You have to figure out how to get back up again and face the page again. And so every morning at 9 a.m., I take every part of me, all of my family, all of my sadness, all of my disappointment, all of my despair, and I lay before the page and say, whatever it is for me to write today, let me do it, and I get to work. That's how I know.
All right. For people who are not writers, you don't understand how intimidating the blank screen or the blank page can be, because what you're doing is you're manifesting wholesale entire worlds, entire people that in a sense don't exist until you start. And so you have to think about so many things. You're juggling so many things. Am I capable of this?
Facts.
And if you're a marginalized writer, you're always dealing with imposter syndrome. Am I worthy enough to do this? So every time you go to that page, and we talk, Danté and I talk often, when he's about to sit down at the cafe and begin his work. And he's a brilliant writer, but he doesn't internalize that. And it's hard to internalize when you have this like deep insecurity and someone is telling you that you're a genius. It seems suspicious. You can't really believe it, but trust me when I tell you, I've read all of the greats, Baldwin and Morrison and so many others, and I can tell you that Danté is brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. In terms of your actual craft, like actually the quality of your writing, what and where are you drawing from to craft your sentences, to shape your structure, to find your rhythm, to develop your tone? When do you know that what you've written is superb enough to let others read it? What is your actual physical practice for writing? And what ways do you think the South influences all of that?
All right. That's like 4 of them at once.
Because
I'm going to try and get them all.
They
actually is connected. So, like, for me, all right, like, I think everything I write is fire. I ain't going to lie. So, like, That's like asking a cornerback, like, hey, bro, like, who's the best corner in the game? Like, me, duh. So honestly, it's just like, even though I don't think, hey, yo, can I take this off the thing? This feels like rugged. I'm not a rugged person, so I'm gonna just talk like this. My bad. That's just the preacher in me. I just gotta get comfortable. So like for me, like, I was talking to Jason the other day, Jason Reynolds, and I told Jason, I was like, Jay, bro, it seemed just like you got so much confidence on the page. Like, you know how to end novels. Like, you got amazing intuition. And Jason was like, nah, I ain't got that much confidence on the page, but I got confidence in the process. So, like, for me, I think, like, so much of my inspiration and, like, how do I know when a thing is good enough to be written, and I mean good enough to be, like, shared with somebody else, it comes from, like, I know I've showed up every morning at 9 a.m., and I've at least tried again to try and write something that is good.
Right.
And all great writing, for any writers in the room, let me help you out. All great writing does really two things. You want to write really good. All right, I'm not a guru. I ain't going to be like, oh, like, if you do this, then you'll finally get it. But it's actually a really good principle. If your writing can begin in desperation and end in empathy, you will always connect with somebody, and they'll walk away with something and want to talk about whatever you wrote.
Say that one more time for the people.
All right. So all good writing. So think about your favorite writers. Think about Baldwin. Think about Toni Morrison. Didn't the white girl get shot in Paradise or something like that?
First page.
First page. Baldwin, or whatnot. Something happening on like the first page of all good literature. Or if you think about movies, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, all great writing begins in desperation and end in empathy. And if I can begin in desperation and end in empathy, then when the person read the page, they will connect with somebody who's just like them, who has something at stakes. Whether you're talking about a children's book, I was just reading The Last House on something street, Market Street. Like, there's something at stakes for this young child, and it's to see all the people that they meet and to make sense of, like, where they come from. Or, like, in my book, it's like, I'm trying to make sense of, like, what it means to be black and American and Christian. And in this next book, I'm trying to make sense of what it means to be black, American, and Christian, and depressed, and sad, and talented all at once. And so I'm trying to make sense of all these things. And so I think if we can begin in desperation and end in empathy, then, like, we can get it going. Now, to my process. I'm very stickler about how I write, like how I get started. It's like football. So I played football. So you gotta have your music. I'm listening to 3 6 Mafia. We in the north. So any of y'all know who 3 6 Mafia is?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We in the north.
No, but this is the
South,
birthplace of hip hop, bro.
Okay, this is the birthplace. Okay, this is the birthplace of hip hop.
Come on,
but like
bro.
3 6 Mafia is like very southern. And we got a little bounce to us that we gotta have.
Even the way you say southern is southern.
Yeah, it's real southern.
It's southern.
It's southern. So like, it's southern. So like, I gotta listen to my music. I don't listen to 3 6 Mafia when I write because it's just too much. I listen to film scores when I write. So I actually wrote "Shoutin' in the Fire" to the same song. Wrote it to one song, and that's The Exhibition by Max Richter. Then I recorded the audio book to the same song. I put one of my wireless headphones in, put the recording headphone on the other ear, and listened to that song. Because, like, for me, I think scenically. Like, as a writer, I want to put somebody in the story. And the most important thing about writing is point of view.
Yes.
It's the decision of where to enter the person in the story. So, like, whether somebody gonna die, or somebody gonna cry, or somebody gonna be happy, like, you gotta make that decision. And for me, if I can, like, have my computer here, have my papers here, have my tea here, and have my music, I can listen to my music and get a rhythm, then when I get to the page, there can be an arc to my story that feels, like, very scenic and feels melodic. And hopefully, like, somebody walk away and be like, God, that joker can write.
And do you feel that there's something particular about the South that shapes that entire process for you?
Yeah, so, like, I think for so, like, New York has a sound. Like, it has a very, like, I love New York. I ain't gonna lie. If I had the bread, I have a place in Brooklyn. Shout out to the Brooklyn folk in the house. So, we're not in the house. We outside. We outside right now. Sometimes we outside shouting. So like there's a sound in New York. There is a type of like energy that's here. There's a pace of life that's like dot, 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 dot. And so it's like, I'm a drummer, so it's like the metronome. So it's like dot, 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 dot here. In the South, it's just like dot, dot, dot. Slower. It's a slower pace. And so because there's such a slow pace that we live life at in the South, you can like hear things that you can't hear when like maybe you're busy. I'm not saying New Yorkers are like too busy and can't hear things, because y'all got some of the best writing, some of the best whatever that the country has ever seen. But like being from the South, like there's a slowness about life that makes you like pay attention. So like I like listening to the cicadas at night. And like I'll sit on the back of my truck. I got a Toyota Tacoma, like the creme de la creme of the like black country boy truck. I sit on the back of my truck, listen to like Stevie Wonder, and just and listen to the cicada and look up at the stars, thinking about like Carl Sagan. So like in New York, you can't. I mean, you probably can do that, but where you got to go in New York to like look up at some stars, like. For sure. So like I think it's not better, it's just different. And so the South has a very different way of like looking at the world in such a way that's like, I don't want to say better, it's not better at all, it's just different. And so the South informs that type of writing by like really noticing, slowing down and noticing and thinking about pace.
I believe that, because when I write in New York, I'm always writing at the magic hour, 3 a.m., when Brooklyn is the most quiet and you can hear things that you otherwise could not hear, because any New Yorker could tell you, like, what a day sounds like for us is constant sirens, ghetto blasters, arguments. That's what we're hearing all day. Dogs barking. God, the dogs barking. With the gentrification, my God, dogs are always barking. It drives me crazy. So 3 a.m. is the only time that I can really write, because the voices of the ancestors can break through the noise, because there is no noise.
Because you're from the South. For y'all don't know, Robert Jones got roots in the South.
Southern roots, yes.
Yeah.
South Carolina and Georgia.
Yeah.
All right. So when you do come to the page, what excites you most? What terrifies you most? Does practicing your art comfort you, or does it disturb you, or both? Do you ever have to deal with imposter syndrome? And what are your practices or techniques for healing those insecurities? Do you feel like a writer? And where do you find the validation to keep writing?
Bro, these questions are stellar, bro. My God. Wow. So I'll tell you this. Last year was the hardest year of mine to date. It really began in September 2nd, 2021, a month before my book comes out on October the 12th. Someone who took me under his wing since I was like 12, 13 years old, played in the NFL 13 years, 3-time Super Bowl champion, really got me to believe that I can play in the league, and I really was following those dreams. And we had a falling out in life after, years and years and years of friendship, deep friendship. And September 2nd, 2021, I get a call, get a few calls, then I get a text that he died in a motorcycle accident. The next month, my book comes out, and we know when your book come out, there's so much, like in order for us to show up in the world, every single one of us, in order for us to show up in the world, there's so much that we have to suppress, simply to be present with what we have. We ain't really got time to like grieve and think and process and stuff like that. So here I am, I'm busy and all of that, and then, I go back home, and granddaddy, has like a jerk about him, and they can't really, the dementia is like, he's really deteriorating. And he's really at the end of his like journey with dementia. And they try and get granddaddy to go to like, get down and eat and things like that. And granddaddy don't want to get down and eat. And so I go over to granddaddy, and with people with dementia, you really gotta you can't really talk with them through words. Like, you have to communicate through touch. And so dementia is a thing that like, it kind of re-invites you to think about like physical touch. So like you guide them down. And so
like
I
a return
guide
to infancy.
100%. So you guide granddaddy down and I start to rub granddaddy head, rub granddaddy head. And so a month later, my granddaddy's dead. A week before that, my aunt passes away. It's her funeral. The week after, another aunt dies. In between all of that, my son has a seizure. A few months after that, literally, like I'm going through another uncle dying and me being like very busy, trying to figure out, okay, how I'm gonna make this thing work as a writer? How I'm gonna make it work as a writer? So here I am, what we normally do, doom scrolling on social media, checking my engagement, making sure everybody get my stuff, trying to be present, trying to be this. And then I have like 5 major panic attacks over last year. And at the end of the year, I'm working on a project that's like crushing my soul. And like, I have one last panic attack in December. I'm literally getting ordained. Reverend Danté Stewart, and I have a panic attack during the ordination service. And that point, I'm like, yo, I got to get some help. And at the end of that year, the beginning of this year, I get diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and CPTSD. And here's this diagnosis, trying to make sense of all these diagnoses. And this is about writing. Like, do you believe, like insecurity, imposter syndrome? What I realized through this diagnosis is that there was no point at which I've lived my life in 31 years where I have believed that I'm worthy and I'm trustworthy.
Jesus.
And so every child in this world, there's 3 things that every child has taken away as they go into adolescence and grow up in this world: their audacity, their intuition, and their self-trust. I have 2 children, right? 2 children, Asa and Ava. If I would take out I got little Polaroids in my thing. They are the most amazing children. They are absolutely the most amazing children, Asa and Ava. I love them. So here I am, with my kids and things like that, and realizing that there are 3 things that every kid has taken away: their audacity, their intuition, their self-trust. You put my kids anywhere in this world, they will believe that they should be there. You give them anything, give them a ball, give them a Bible, give them a book, give them a canvas, give them another child, and they're going to figure it out. And in all of this stuff, all of these things, they're going to trust that in between all of that, they can make something happen. And there are 3 things that every adult lives with because of those things were taken away: desperation, loneliness, and regret. Every one of us, every person you've met, every single one, at some point, that's going to happen. And I realized that as a kid, as an adult, there was no point at which I've trusted that I was worthy and trustworthy. And so dealing with all of this, going to the page is terrifying. Yeah. Because when you live in that type of life, everything is so consequential. So you can't even enjoy waking up in the morning and your son talking about Transformers. Because it's like, hey, bro, I got to get to the page. Right. I got to get to the check. And I got to get to like building this career. But something happened the other day. It's Father's Day. Got to give you something for Father's Day. Something happened the other day, 2 days ago, that like has really changed how I think about myself. Okay. My son is absolutely brilliant. The cat is just brilliant. He's sensitive, brilliant, amazing. Every adjective that I can pull out in the dictionary, every good adjective is him. I'm in the gym working out, and my son walks in the gym. I'm riding the bike. And he says, "Daddy, it's Friday. Can I get my iPad?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right. I'll get your iPad." I come out, and I get off the bike. He goes back in the house. He climbs up on the thing because I put the iPad on the top of the thing. So me and my wife, we very stickler about like no electronics till Friday. So we get the iPad. We get down, and my son says, "Yay," and he turns around. He says, "Daddy, you remember what I told you?" I said, "No. What did you tell me?" He says this. He does this. Motion said, he says, "I'm proud of you." And he steps back. And he runs away. And I realized that like the page is so hard And writing is so hard and so terrifying and so beautiful because oftentimes the context of which we have to do this work in erases how proud people are of us that see us. And it makes us want to be accepted by people who just want to exploit us. And so we return to the page, hopefully, to like close our eyes on that voice and listen to this child who sees you, who knows you, who doesn't want anything from you. And that's the most truest thing of you. Because there's nothing that's transactional about that.
Bars.
Bars.
I'm gonna ask one more question, and then we're gonna go to the audience for Q&A. So if you guys have questions, please.
And I'll be short.
You have them. And you'll be short.
I'm a preacher, man, so I
Okay.
gotta tell the story. So.
This is my last question. You write very often about the ways in which black men are singled out and targeted for very specific violences. How do you not succumb to the sorrow that you must necessarily mine in order to interrogate our particular vulnerability?
Repeat that one more time so I can really think about it real quick.
You write very often about the ways in which black men are singled out and targeted for very specific violences. How do you not succumb to the sorrow that you must necessarily mine in order to interrogate our particular vulnerability?
Sometime I do.
Succumb to the sorrow.
Oh, 100%. I ain't gonna lie, y'all, I'm kind of pessimistic as a person. I'm kind of cynical in some regard.
It's hard not to be.
It's very hard not to be. Like, check this out. Like, we're sitting right here right now, and Mother Fletcher is 109 years old, and Unc is 102. Beautiful, brilliant black folk, and here they are in 2023 having to repeat something that happened over 100 years ago. And in the same week, we have a student in Philadelphia that's denied their diploma. In the same week, we have, Nikki Haley going at Barack Obama. In the same week, really in the same month, you have like a young black kid murdered in South Carolina, in my home state. In that same month, you have another young black kid in Mississippi shot by cops but survived it. In that same year, you have a kid who knocks on the wrong door, is shot in the head, got to get up, run to another house while he's bleeding, while he's dealing with all of this.
Nobody opening the door for him.
Nobody opens the door, and somehow, by some miracle,
Grace.
he survives it. So I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I do succumb to the hardness of this world in ways that make it very, very hard to be present and do what I do. But it's that little sliver of hope that says, like, maybe I will be like my grandmother and my grandfather, who leave something behind, where their young grandson will find something in their story worth telling.
Isn't that what Baldwin said? Find me in the wreckage.
Oh, find me in the wreckage, 100%. If you go looking about what happened in civilization, find me in the wreckage. There's actually another Baldwin quote that I hold dear and near to my heart. Baldwin says to his nephew, he tells him in the fire next time, he tells his nephew this. He says that what they do and cause you to endure is not a testament to your inferiority, or you being quote unquote less than, but it's a testament to their inhumanity and their fear. And so in the moments where I do succumb to the despair, somehow I at least believe that at 9 a.m. that next morning, there's something waiting on me to do. And I'm gonna find a way to do it. That's it.
Thank you, Danté. Audience questions. Okay, so this first question is going to be asked by another one of our brothers Frederick T. Joseph, author of Patriarchy Blues. If you don't have Patriarchy Blues,
Shout to
I'm
Freddie.
telling you, that's the book. Go ahead, Fred.
So my question is, in your writing, you write from a place of vulnerability. You write from a place of, I'd say most often imagining a better version of yourself, and then in part imagining a better version of all of us for having read your work, right? And you also mentioned that you are currently writing a book from a place of desperation, a place of empathy, a place of depression, so on and so forth, right? When you get to the place that you're trying to get to, what is the book you want to write then?
That's a good question.
Man, that's a really good question. When I get to the place I want to go to, huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's actually very real. When I get to the place I want to get, what is the book I want to write? I don't even know if I think about it that way, bro. Like, I think for me, what I want to actually do is like, I think I want to write and love whatever I write. And never let a good idea die because of insecurity. So like right now, as I'm working on this book, What a Broken Heart Can Do, I had a meeting with my agent yesterday, and I'm like dreading this meeting, y'all. I'm like, Lord, I turned in my proposal. I'm like, golly, I'm like legit like dreading this meeting because it's like a month had passed by or whatnot. And I'm like, oh God, is this thing like actually working out? And what's crazy is that like she gives me a call and she tells me like, yo, like, you know, it's an amazing joint that's crystallizing right now. And I think for me, like, I want to get to the place when I think where's the place I want to be. I think I want security to know that like when I write something and get to it and do it, that is enough to like have a life of its own about it. That is enough to return to again and again and again. And so, yes, like Robert is saying, I think the book I really want to write right now, outside of my my next nonfiction text,
Don't
is,
say the title.
I'm not gonna
So
say the
nobody
title.
can steal it.
I'm not gonna say the title. I ain't gonna do that. I wasn't gonna give away the good. It's a story about a young kid who has anxiety disorder, who grows up in the South and tries to like find everything that's been lost. So I think that's the book I really want to do when I get the chops to do it. I want to write that book.
Thank you, Fred, for that question. Does anybody else have a question? Because I have more questions for Danté if you're done. Gentleman right there.
First of all, thank you so much for your words. They've been inspiring and touching. You talked about how, I was just wondering, you talked about how growing up you had this dream and aspiration of playing the league, right? You had this very important relationship where you were working towards this goal and you really believed that you could do it. And I'm sure you invested time, energy, and effort into what you were doing. And now you look at where you are today. You're a writer, you're a reverend, you're a father. So how have you been able to let go of your past dreams and aspirations in juxtaposition to who you are today and who you are becoming? And do you feel pain? Do you mourn the loss of these past dreams and aspirations? Or are you able to just accept in totality who you are today?
That's a great
Oh, my guy, if I could give you a hug, I would give you a hug right now. Because I swear, that has been my life over the last decade since I've been out of college. Like,
So what the gentleman was asking is if Danté mourns having shifted gears and becoming the man who he is now based on, as opposed to the dream he had for himself prior to this.
yeah, so I think for me, man, I do. I mourn it a lot because, like, I feel like grief is so much more about our relationship to time than it is about, like, our relationship to what actually happens in our lives. Human beings really aren't necessarily, like, afraid of moving on. We're mostly afraid that the time that we have is lost forever. So, like, when you think about, like, death, like, you know, we are afraid of death, but, like, we're really afraid that, like, yo, I don't want to die at 30, bro. You know? Or when it comes to, like, you know, when it comes to, like, having to give up football, it's like, yo, this thing is forever done. Like, I don't care how fast I run, how good I am, and I'm pretty fast still. I ain't playing in the league, and I probably still could cover somebody, but it ain't happening. Or whatnot. It's just the God honest truth. It just is what it is, baby. But I think one of the things that, and if I can speak in this language, that God has been speaking to me in this season of life, is that like the unknown is full of expectation. The unknown is full of expectation. Too oftentimes we think the unknown is full of doom and gloom. And so therefore, when it comes time to give something up, we prolong its death, trying to salvage its life, when it's okay for a good thing to die and be reborn to something better. It's written into the literal laws of the world, like the created universe. Like a thing dies and something else is born. And it's okay to mourn that thing and to remember it and to like sit with it. And like the toughest part is we've been so like concerned about like the future and so burdened by the past that it's very hard to fully be in the present. And if we can be better at being in the present, then when it comes time to leave a thing behind, we can appreciate it for what it was and how it won't serve us in this moment. And like when I bro, I'm gonna tell you some real stuff. When I got that news that this project I was working on had got like, was like, you know, whatever happened to it, you know, and it was done, I was very disappointed. It took me back to 2013 when I had quit football and walked away. And I told myself I did not want to be a quitter again. I did not want to be bitter. And you want to know what was whispered to me, bro? What was whispered to me is, you are not the same person.
Right.
You are not the same person. So if I believe I fumbled the bag in a season in the past, that doesn't mean that I'm going to respond to the same thing in the present. And that's some real good news. That actually is what my therapist did, was complaining to my therapist about being disappointed. My therapist opens up the notes from the beginning of the year to now and begin to read to me every good thing I did over this last year, over the year so far. And what he simply said was this. He says, you think you're simply disappointed because disappointment is all you see. But here is the evidence of all that you have done. And it's my job to remind you of it. And so if we can remind ourselves of the evidence, when it comes time to mourn that loss, it won't always be good, but we'll be a little bit better at it. That's all I got.
Danté, thank you so very much for this. And Danté will be signing copies of his book, Shoutin' in the Fire, over by the shop. So please purchase, support writers, buy banned books. Ashe.